Hello, and thank you for listening to this episode of the Get Out There podcast. My name's Billy Newman. I'm here today with Robert Biscarret. How you doing, Robert?
Good, Billy. How you doing?
I'm doing really good. Thanks a lot for doing another episode of this podcast. I think we're doing episode number 3 today.
We are.
That's pretty cool, man. But yeah, I was gonna say I wanted to talk to you about some of the stuff that will probably be in a few more weeks as we get into the nicer weather. But I wanted to talk to you about some of like your past bear experiences. I was wondering what that was like for you because you were doing guide stuff down on the Lower Rogue River. And I know in Grants Pass, really a lot of time, we didn't have a lot of bear boxes or a lot of bear concerns about the wildlife or the wilderness right around the area of town there. I think like if you go south into the Siskiyous or over into the coastal range, there's probably more stuff over there, but it seemed always like a lot lighter than it was further south, like when you got into California. I remember like when we went just a little bit east of like Redding in the Mount Shasta area and like up into the Whiskey Lake area, there was like tons of bear boxes. It seemed like that was like a big thing that they had to protect against all the time. And it was sort of strange because there wasn't really that much exposure for me when I was doing a lot of camping stuff in Southern Oregon or in Eastern Oregon, especially I guess Eastern Oregon, to have much exposure with like bear encounters up there. And I think it wasn't until I got into like going to the Lower Rogue before I even saw like the electric fences. So I was gonna ask you
Yeah,
about like
yeah.
what kind of stuff you had to run into when you were checking out, or like when you're doing low road trips.
Well, yeah. I mean, we have plenty of bear encounters down there, and I think one of the big contributors to that is just the amount of people that are down there all the time. I mean, the bears really know when people are around. There's food. A bunch of new smells. They have an incredible sense of smell. So that traffic down there really kind of brings them into the area, and not to mention, um, and I could be a little off, but I'm fairly certain that the Lower Rogue Canyon, I know about 10 years ago, was the highest black bear population in the lower 48.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow, 10 years ago.
yeah. I mean, think about it. I mean, the road going up there to Gold Beach and Agnes, that's Bear Camp Road. I mean, you see bear fences over there all over the place. But yeah, I believe Forest Service did a study in like a flyover and found that in that canyon, there's more bears per square mile than anywhere else in the lower 48.
Wow, I wouldn't have really thought about that, but yeah, I do understand like Bear Creek and Bear Camp Road, and seems like a lot of bear
Yeah.
references. I knew that there was a lot of bear activity in Southern Oregon in the past. Like if we go back 100 years or so, I think 150 years, there's a lot of talk about the bear population over in Oregon and over in this section of like the forested areas. Like a lot of the gold miners had to deal with them up in the hills in those areas. I think even like in the like what wasn't isn't Bear Camp Road part gold mine as you go up? Have you seen that?
Yeah, a lot of mining claims up there.
Yeah, that's what I had seen. I knew like up on Mount Baldy in Grants Pass, there's a lot of claims in that area, and I'd heard about some bear encounters that happened up there, like up by Summit Loop, and then over further into the hills, like past Mount Baldy, kind of over in the Applegate area. It
Uh-huh.
was like way back stuff. Or like, do you remember the story? We heard about this in high school. I think we went to the grave site for this one time, but it was like this piece of local
Yeah.
Grants Pass history lore. We went to the oldest grave site in Grants Pass. It's like in this little park now. It's a really strange thing, but you go up and you see this tombstone, and it's from 1856, like sometime before the Civil War. And there's this tombstone that says that this man, B.H. Baird, died of a grizzly bear attack down by the Rogue River in what would today be Rogue River Park, or like just the park downtown. Like, isn't that nuts?
I've seen that gravesite. Yeah, back in elementary school, we used to walk over there we went over there on a field trip one time, and we had to do like crayon transcripts. You put the piece of transfer paper on the tombstone and do
Oh
like a
yeah, I
rub,
totally
and
remember.
then and so we all had to make a rub of that tombstone. But I mean, it's crazy. I mean, if you're going back that distance in time, I mean, at that time, what, 1856, Oregon isn't even a state yet.
Yeah,
Um,
another few years.
yeah, and so you've got California as the bear state, and I mean, grizzlies used to be down here and pretty prominent in the area. I mean, it wasn't until kind of like that. that settling that happened,
Was that
that
like
we
a?
started kind of driving them all out.
I was wondering about that, like how it was that we was is that an extirpation when you remove an animal from its range? Because it seems like we don't even talk about grizzly bears in Southern Oregon
No,
or in Oregon at all, right?
they're not even acknowledged. And so that's the thing is, I believe it was in, well, I know it was in Ashland, but I think around it was like in the early 1900s, and I don't know the year for sure, but the last grizzly was taken out of that area.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it was actually roaming around up in the hills and was having some major confrontation with people in the area.
Yeah, that seems like it would be a huge issue, like as all those people moved in, and what I mean, like seven or eight, well, like every town in Oregon, it was a new town in like 1850. So yeah, I'm sure there's like,
Well,
yeah, you just have to think like how many generations is that the animals and the wildlife that's used to like go into that area to feed or to get access to the river or whatever it is, like whatever their natural range is, like how long it takes before those conflicts with people push them out or kind of just where those animals get eliminated because of the people in the area.
yeah, I mean it's pretty mind-boggling when you think about it. Really doesn't take that much time. I mean, between 1858 and 1900, we had eradicated pretty much all the wild grizzlies in the area.
I think for like nuisance animals like that, you almost have to. I mean, or it seems like at the time you would have had to in that frontiers mindset. My goodness, man, if I moved out here from the East Coast and I just had to be plopped down in the mountains of Southern Oregon, fighting off grizzly bears coming through town, eating a guy in the park downtown,
Yeah,
I'd have a
you
different
know.
mindset about conservation.
Well, and that's the thing too. Is back then, everything was just as far as they were concerned, just an infinite resource. It wasn't like we were running out of anything. You
Yeah,
know,
right.
the whole West was fairly untouched. I mean,
I'm sure back then,
other
definitely.
than native peoples. Um, but what's funny is I just think of like current day Ashlanders. The same people that had a city council meeting about aggressive deer in the area. Dealing with grizzly bears in the 1900s.
Oh my gosh, is that what did they do that aggressive deer?
Yeah,
It's
yeah, they're having a
a big deer problem in
problem
that area.
with deer kind of taking over the city, and they had a city council meeting about how they were gonna acknowledge these deer because they had kind of just lost their fear of people and became very tame.
Oh wow.
And yeah, so and this was just like a year ago.
Yeah. No, I totally. I always see, or for the last few years, definitely, I'd see deer just kind of cruising through in big numbers in that Ashland Lithia Park. There, you just see like tons of
Hmm.
them just hanging out with everybody. But even that seems to be even like it is in Grants Pass. I remember, I swear, back in 2000, 2003, 2004, I didn't see deer at all in the neighborhood that I grew up in. Like over in
Well, it was
the
it was a recession, so they were,
where they
you
were
know,
drawn back during that time. Oh yeah, the
yeah, they
economy,
were
man, they're having a tough time.
financially unstable.
But no, before that, like and I talked to my grandpa about this too. He's lived here all of his life, and he would talk about, yeah, like we really never saw deer come through the yard until the year 2004. Like that's the year they had to put up like a high fence around the garden to keep it safe. And they said, yeah, we just never had a problem with it before. We had like one or two come through, but it was never in these big groups that they had like now. And I guess they were saying that like the population in town it just exploded over the last 2 decades.
And see, I wonder what that is because that could be deer moving down to populated areas for lack of predators. You're
Oh
never
sure.
typically going to see a lion in the area. I mean, there's occasional sightings, but I wonder if they kind of come into these rural areas in these kind of urban settings to kind of escape that, find gardens that are out and about. Um, but I don't know what 2004, that
2004 to
time frame would have,
2016.
how that would have correlated.
Yeah,
But
it's interesting. That was the time that there was probably the most new development in that region that there had been in a long time. So I bet it probably pushed out or disturbed some of the area that pod of animals lived, and they probably got pushed over another mountain range to where we
mhm.
are. But it seems interesting, if you stay in an area for long enough, this about some of the animals that kind of traffic your backyard out there. But you notice that they're kind of on a schedule. Like it seems like they wander around. They have a range that they kind of travel through, but it seems like that animal comes back around through the yard or something in the same way every day, every couple days. We see that with a family, like a group of like doe that would go through my parents' yard,
Hmm.
and they just come through like every morning at 10 a.m. and they just kind of cruise across the street and they go on their way. And I don't know, they must make some kind of loop back through sometime, but it's kind of funny. It's weird how they're
Yeah,
just kind of set
and
like that.
and that's how it is too. It's just like they've lost that kind of instinctive fear of people in this area. We're not an immediate threat to them in
Sure.
a city setting. Same with turkeys. You see them in your backyard all the time.
Oh yeah,
Or
yeah. We just
you'll
started
be
seeing
driving
turkeys.
down the road. Yeah, I mean
Oh yeah. So tell me about those turkeys.
yeah. So the other day I was driving through downtown Medford, which is very populated, and I actually had to stop for a crossing of turkeys. And I mean, traffic just came to a complete halt, and we all just sat there and let these turkeys cross for about a minute and a half,
Wow.
and then everybody went about their day.
How big was the group?
Uh, what would you call that? Gaggle?
I was wondering. It's like a gaggle of geese, a murder
A
of
flock?
crows, a flock of seagulls, birds of a
Um,
feather.
yeah, I don't
I
know.
don't know.
All these the avian types, they all have their own kind of segregated names.
Yeah, they really
Um,
need all those different words to describe being in a group. I always thought that
well,
was
they
funny.
do.
uh, but
But go
yeah,
ahead.
how many are in a group though? I mean, I've seen maybe like 20 or 30 or so in a group.
I would say this was about 20. I mean, it was a good size,
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen like little geese. It's kind of funny how like when they're really little they stay together. Or, like what is it? I guess not like I was thinking the partridge family, but like quail, right? Like quail, like little
Yeah.
groups of quail. Those families like all stick together. You see like pods of those that are around like 12 or 15 in size. It's kind of funny
Well,
how they move around.
well, it's funny. We're talking about the way animals move in and out of areas.
Yeah.
Where I'm at now, my grandparents lived out here, and I used to come out this area all the time as a kid. And we used to see tons of quail up on the driveway coming into our place.
Oh wow.
Um, but with the development of people kind of moving into the area, and this place is, I wouldn't say blown up, but there's definitely an influx of people living out here now.
Right.
And with that has come some cats, domestic house cats that people have brought and kind of let run wild, and then they birth feral cats. And at this
Yeah.
point now, I haven't seen a quail out here in probably 10 years.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
That's interesting how that changes. I've seen like that kind of move around too. I remember when I was a kid, this seems like a silly thing to notice, but you probably believe me that I did notice it. When I was a kid in the 90s and maybe up to like 2001, 2002, there was every evening in the summertime this murder of crows, this huge group of crows that would move south at like sunset, like every night. It seemed like they would come out from like some section kind of down by the river or like maybe
Hmm.
like a mile or two south or something like that, and they'd come up that kind of draw around like Hamilton Road or something like that, and they'd cruise up and they'd go right
Yeah.
over our house and over my grandparents' house every night. And it seemed like they had been doing that for years. I talked to my grandparents about it. They said, "Yeah, we've been watching them do it for decades now as we sit out here in the evening and water the garden." And then for maybe the last 8, 10, 8, 9 years, maybe 10 years, they're not there anymore. Not like they used to be at all. So it's weird how I mean, they might have just moved over, a few blocks or for whatever reason, but it's
Yeah,
weird how
but
like little
why? I
things move
mean,
like that. Yeah, for
you
having
think
done
maybe
it
it's
for
like an
so
air
long.
quality type
It
thing,
must be
or
like it must be new houses or new places or maybe they got disturbed out of, wherever they would go to or whatever place they would or trees or something
Well,
they would hang out.
yeah. I mean, the housing development's really blown up in this area, and I think that I mean, there's no denying that that's going to have some kind of effect on wild animals in the area.
The one that my grandpa pointed out was a fox. I don't know what you guys
Yeah.
used to see, but he said that like when he was a kid and all the way up through him growing up and being out here, he had never seen a fox out in that area, like out over on Clover Lawn. And he said like he saw one maybe 6 or 7 years ago, and he was like, "Wow, that's like the first fox like that we've ever seen out here." It's weird. Do you guys see foxes out there?
I've seen. Not out here, and I think that's probably because we have dogs.
Oh,
But
sure.
yeah, so we've got dogs in the area, which I think kind of keep a lot of uh, probably fox out of the area
That
also.
makes sense. Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I've seen a couple fox down near the Applegate. Um, and then another thing is we have coyotes that show up
Oh, I was curious
semi
about
often.
that. Do you see coyotes pass through that area much?
Not frequently, but there has been. Okay, so when we first got Layla, our little Australian Shepherd,
Right. Yeah.
um, and she was just a puppy, she would bark, and there was this little pack of coyotes that was up the hill from us, and it was a little spooky, but a little cool at the same time. They would have one, and I watched this. They had one coyote sit up the hill and respond to her barking.
Ooh, I've
She
heard
would
about this. Yeah.
she would bark, and it would bark back to her, almost kind of enticing her to kind of go up the hill.
Hey, come hang out. Be one of us.
Yeah,
One of us wild
yeah. Hey,
dogs.
we're some dogs up here,
We're just
and
some
I
wild
mean she's
dogs.
about the size of a coyote,
Yeah.
so she's gonna get up there, and there's gonna be 20 of them, and she's gonna be in trouble.
Yeah. Do they go for dogs? Is that what they do? Or or like, because they're not their own, or how's that work?
Yeah, so you kind of got to worry about that situation. There's a pack of 20, and they're obviously going to take advantage of a domesticated animal. And a lot of times in urban settings, you'll see kind of the way coyotes and other different predators will actually prey on these domestic animals because they're so familiar with humans and have kind of, in a sense, lost their natural instinct to find fear from these animals.
Oh, interesting. Huh. I'd heard a
Yeah.
story about, I think maybe kind of similar to the dynamic you were talking about, how there was a pod of coyotes. There was one that came out and it was kind of calling out to or enticing the dog at this guy's house. And I don't know, they had like a dog conversation, and this coyote kind of convinced the bad attitude out of this domesticated dog. Like there was chickens in the property. And so this coyote kind of like talked to him for a couple days. Like they kind of saw him like get a little closer, a little friendlier with each other as like different dogs. And then a couple days into it, the house dog like attacked a chicken. I think like the coyote got in too, and they both like got chickens and then like took off and hung out together and like killed the chickens and stuff. And you
That's
think like, oh, that's a nuts thing. Like this like coyote, this other wild dog came in and then like taught like a new kind of behavior to a domesticated dog, and they like got away with a bunch of livestock. It's crazy though.
that's funny. It's just like, yeah, invoking that natural predatorial sense in a house dog.
Yeah, it must be,
Like,
and yeah, kind of
hey,
following with the pack or something. But yeah, it was like yeah, kind of like hey, come here with us. We're crazy wild dogs.
yeah.
You got to do it. So I wanted to talk to you real fast about
Hey,
about some of the bear stuff that we were talking about. So like even in your backyard there, where we're talking about the coyotes, you've seen bears out there, right? Don't you guys have one out there like even right now, or not right now, but like within the
uh,
last year? Don't you see one that kind of roams that area?
oh yeah, yeah, I do.
What's he like?
So I'm out. He's a pain, man. Um, so basically, I don't have a trash service out here. So we uh
Right, I
we
remember
keep
that.
all of our trash, yeah, all of our trash in cans, and then once a month or so, I'll take it down to the landfill and then pay your fee and take care of that. But what the problem with that is these bears with incredible sense of smell all of your waste, and they want to come in because they're curious animals by nature,
Right.
and they want to get a little taste of what you've been cooking in the kitchen. And so it's great. You'll go to work and then you come home and you'll just find like three trash cans dumped over, and three trash cans worth of garbage just spread around your property. And
Oh, that's great.
yeah, so you get to spend the next couple hours sitting outside just picking up trash that you already um, so carefully placed into a garbage bag
Oh my
weeks
gosh,
before.
that'd be so frustrating. So, what do you guys have to keep it inside or something, or is there like a what do you do?
Well, so this past spring, I got really fed up with it, and I actually built a little like a 10 by 12 shed
Oh, that's a smart
and
idea. Yeah.
yeah, and yeah. So now I keep all the cans in there under lock. So I yeah, and that's honestly that's cut down the problem significantly. I actually haven't dealt with him, knock on wood, for about a year now. But for a while there, it was like every other night, about 3 o'clock in the morning, you'd wake up to the sound of trash cans getting knocked over and stuff.
And this.
And for the most, go ahead.
Oh, you go ahead.
Oh, for the most part, they're pretty skittish. You go out there and yell at them and kind of charge at them, and they'll take off. Um, but this particular bear that I was dealing with kind of got to the point where it was really standing its ground with me.
That's tough.
And
That's a rough one.
yeah, I wasn't really a big fan of it. I mean, one account that I can really that sticks out in my mind. It's about 3 o'clock in the morning, and we got a heavy snow, and this is 2 years ago, and the area, Southern
Yeah.
Oregon. That's not real typical of a winter.
Right.
But he must have been hungry, and oh, bears hibernate in the winter. Well, no, they just are less active in the winter. But he must have been hungry or something. And I grab my shotgun and run out in the yard. I'm in my boxers and my boots, and I run out there with just my iPhone flashlight, and you know about how powerful
Yeah,
those
it's like
are.
nothing.
Yeah, and I just meet him in the yard, and
Oh
he's
wow.
just standing there. He's about 20 feet away, and I'm yelling at him and stuff, and he's just kind of like, "What are you gonna do?" you
Yeah.
know,
What do you got?
and
I'm here
yeah,
every
and
every other day. You would have done something by now if it mattered.
exactly.
Oh man, that's tough.
So no, he stood his ground on me. And if you've been around bears that are getting fairly aggressive, they'll kind of do like a bark. Uh, it's kind of a grunt. I mean, it doesn't sound like a dog bark, but it's just kind of like a low grunt.
Yeah.
And so I threw a snowball at him, I think, and
Ooh.
and he grunted at me, and then I yelled at him again, and he grunted
Throw a
at me
snowball at a
again.
bear.
Yeah.
You get out of here, bear. I'll hit you with a snowball. So I was gonna ask you, outside of snowballs, what would you use as a bear deterrent? Like, did you have to bring bear deterrent with you down on the lower road too?
And when we guide, um, we're discouraged to bring firearms with us.
Yeah, I figured that would
But
be bad.
I won't name any names, but some of us do. Um, just because these bears have been so introduced to people that they've really lost that instinctive fear, and they've really kind of become quite a nuisance down there.
I was
Um,
wondering how that
so
was. Yeah.
so some of the guides, definitely not me, will carry a firearm down there.
So outside of
Um,
outside of like lethal deterrent, what do you think of the bear spray, like the pepper spray canisters that you pick up?
I mean, we're not in grizzly country, and black bears by nature are pretty skittish. I mean, they don't really want anything to do with you. They just want what
Yeah,
you have.
that's what I'd
Um,
seen before too. I mean, like I'd seen a black bear maybe 3 times, and as soon as it even noticed we were 100 feet around there, it just bolted as fast as it could. It was just scrambling up the side of a hill, and you think, "Oh my god, how can it climb something
well,
like that so fast?" But
so there's a couple points on that. I want to answer your question, but then I also kind of want to talk about being close with bear too.
oh yeah,
Um, so to answer your question, okay, yeah. So to answer your question, um, when we're down there in the canyon, a lot of times what we'll do is, you want to make yourself large and loud. Um, Typically, we'll take our coolers full of food, we'll stack them in a pile,
okay,
and then we'll stack pots and pans on top of them. And
okay,
then, so that way, if they're getting into them, we can hear them. We take everything out of the boat because we don't want them getting in there, popping a raft or anything like that.
yeah.
Um, but then what we'll do is we all go to sleep with like a couple Dutch oven lids next to our cots.
Oh really? Okay.
So yeah, and you got your headlamp ready. So when you hear that rustling and the pots and pans falling and stuff, you know, all the guides jump up and everybody grabs their lids and starts clanging them together and yelling at them, and they'll take off.
Yeah, so the noise is enough of a deterrent. And
Yeah.
had you said you had like a nuisance bear one night that like had come up and was like snapping. Had you told me
Yeah,
that story?
yeah.
What happened with that? Or
Well,
what happened?
we had a fill-in guide. She guides for another company on the road, and she was with us. And this is funny too because we cooked this big salmon dinner,
Nice.
and we have salmon drippings everywhere, and all we got salmon skin, everything all over the camp. And so typically, one of us always sleeps in the kitchen to kind of watch over everything, and that was me that night. And it was a lazy night. I think we probably had too many beers, and it was like, I'm not gonna pick this up. I'm just gonna play the odds and say we're not gonna get a bear in camp tonight. And so I go to bed.
Just play
I
the
go to
odds, you know.
yeah. So I
I've
end
done
up
it
going
too,
to
man. I've
bed.
done it.
Well, yeah, you have to. I mean, it's if you can.
I
I don't know.
I never run into a bear. I think we did it like when we were doing a backpacking trip. We had to put our food into a bear safe container and then like hoist it into a tree more than 50 meters away from our tent, something like that. And I think like we pulled in, we set up super late, and we put it out a ways. But man, we did not do whatever absolute thing we were supposed to do for our bear food protection.
Well, you know what? I mean, most of the time, I mean, you're gonna see bear less times than you will, or
Oh
excuse me,
yeah.
you're going to not see bear more than you will see bear.
It seems like it's been how it is in my life. I mean, if we're talking about the most bears in that area, I mean, that was kind of like where we grew up in that area, Southern Oregon. I've only seen a bear a couple times in that area. I mean, I think I saw it. I think on two of the hikes I did down on the Lower Rogue. I think I saw another one out in the Applegate, or out past Applegate Lake. That was out in California, out in the Siskiyous. I guess we saw a black bear out there, and then maybe one other time on the road while I was driving. That's it. That's really all I've seen. So I hardly ever see or have a black bear encounter at all. But you're down there more. So what? So okay. So we're back. We're camping. There's salmon spread across this campsite. It's nighttime. Robert played the odds.
Yeah. So
We turn over the
next
next
thing
card.
I know, next thing I know, I'm getting woken up not by a bear, but by Dove, and she's kicking me, and she's going, wake up!" And I got a flashlight in my face, and I'm like, "What are you doing right now?" And she's like, "This bear just came over and was sniffing my face."
Oh my
so,
god.
so she wakes up to a bear just
Oh.
in her face
Ooh
sniffing
man.
her. And so she jumps up. She spooks the bear. It runs off a few yards. And she's yelling at it, I guess. And
Yeah.
and so she's yelling at it, throwing stuff at it. And if you've kind of provoked the bear enough, they'll do this kind of like jaw grinding. They'll grind their jaw.
Wow.
This is kind of past the little barking stage that they'll do, and that's really a situation where you kind of need to be on point.
Wow.
So anyway, somehow she got this bear to kind of lose immediate interest, and she was waking me up. And honestly, the times that I have slept through bear situations in camp are way too many.
Ooh, yikes.
I wake up the next morning and they're like, "Oh man, where were you?"
Oh, Robert faded again. Robert's gonna be back in just 1 second. We're having trouble with this
I didn't
connection.
even know.
Robert, come back in with what you're talking about. I won't reset it, but so we were saying like, where were you last night when, or like you were just coming into that? How many times you slept through a bear walking through camp?
Yeah, yeah. There's been multiple times that people have, other guides were just like, "Where were you last night? We had that bear in camp." And most of the time, it's just, sorry.
All right, we just dropped out for a second, but Robert, I was going to ask you to come back with that story that we were talking about, where the bear was sniffing this girl's head. She woke up, she moved back, she got your attention. You woke up. What happens next?
Well, at that point, she had got it to leave, and she was freaked out. She wanted anybody awake with her,
Yeah, absolutely. I
and
would too, man. I'd be so
so
scared. I wouldn't go back to sleep that
yeah.
night.
No, man, and she was so pissed off because I'm laying right next to the trash and all this salmon skin in and everything, and I never got bothered. And she's sleeping on the outskirts of camp,
Didn't sniff
you know.
Robert's face.
So yeah. Anyway, it left me alone. But
But you're saying it started snapping? Did you see it snap?
no, I didn't
Or
see it snap.
it was
But
snapping at her?
yeah, and not necessarily snapping, but doing like a jaw
Or
click.
jaw
Like it'll
grinding?
click its jaw and almost like grind its teeth.
Oh,
Um,
weird. I would
and
not
I've
want to
heard
see that.
no, I especially in the dark when you can't see it.
Yeah, I'd feel so threatened. Like, hey, bear. Oh, yes.
Yeah. So yeah. Anyway, it's just one of those things. You got to get people awake, make noise, do stuff. But the problem is with people being with bear and high populated areas like that. They're losing that instinctive fear, and that can be kind
Nuisance
of a dire
bears.
situation.
Yeah, and I hear like you see the signs up that say like nuisance bears will be destroyed. And you think
Well,
like,
yeah.
oh man, that is a final sentence there. That's like, or
Well,
yeah,
that's the Bureau of Land Management. That's what their signs are all down there. Is
right, yeah.
a fed bear is a dead bear. If you start feeding these bears and leaving food around, they're going to start showing up more and more. And then as a nuisance bear, they have to try to relocate. And if that's not going to work, then they have to exterminate that bear.
Man, that sounds so tough. I just like we were talking about Steve Rinella's podcast earlier. I just listened to an episode from a bear scientist that works at Yellowstone National Park studying the bear population there. And
Okay.
they were talking about this big upset that happened years ago when I think the establishments that were in Yellowstone, like the restaurants and the lodges and the towns just outside of
Mm-hmm.
Yellowstone that were part of that ecosystem, they would all have these food dumps where they would just they would have like a pit that would put all the food that people didn't eat in the park or whatever went bad, and it would be this feeding frenzy or this feeding area for all of the bears that were in that ecosystem. They all kind of worked off of this, and it was just kind of like an attraction for a while where bears would come in and eat the food. And so they made a decision that they were going to stop the food drops, as it were. Like and then they had
Mm-hmm.
to like change. It wasn't really intentional at first. It was just like a dumpster. Or it was like the area that the trash was going to go. I think it was kind of like the trash area of Yellowstone, which is kind of weird to think that there's such a thing. But I guess with all the people that go through, it would be something like this. And this is way back too. But they stopped these feeding sites, and then a big part of that population of bears like died off or had other types of conflicts that happened when it was trying to seek out different places to get food that had now become more scarce. But really interesting how those conflicts come
Well,
about.
see that, and that's what happens is you've got bear coming into this you know infinite food source that they keep coming back to because we leave all this waste. And what happens is, not that generation, but a generation or two down the road, these bears are used to feeding off of our waste and then
Sure.
don't really know how to fend for themselves in the wild. And it's all fun while it's a tourist attraction and people get to snap pictures, but then you've got these bears that are dying in the wild, and also you're getting your car window.
All right, we're back now. We faded out for 1 second with Robert's call, his Skype call in for us, but we were talking about that last little bit of how there were the bears in the Yellowstone range that had difficulties a couple generations after they had become dependent on these food sources, these food drops. And it's really weird those types of conflicts that happen when people enter an area that's just been wilderness and wildlife before. It's interesting how that goes for us, but there's always been types of conflicts.
Yeah, and as long as there's people, there will still continue to be that conflict between natural wildlife and us.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I think in future podcasts we should talk about some of the wildlife management stuff that we've learned about, some of the ways that BLM works, or Fish and Game, or some of these other departments and how they manage some of that stuff. That's a big learning curve for me. I'm a pretty simple hiker and
Yeah.
photographer a lot of time, but I think part of having this podcast I think is really interesting to learn a little bit more about some of those maybe more serious aspects or just more of the governance side of how wildlife and outdoor recreation management goes. It's kind of interesting stuff. I think it's cool to talk about. And it's been fun talking about with you too. I think it's cool.
Yeah, and I think that'd be something great to elaborate on. I think that's something that more and more people need to understand and acknowledge, the way our national parks and public lands are run.
Yeah, I think it'd be cool to talk about some of that stuff, and it'll give me a chance to learn about it a little bit more. But thanks,
Y-
Robert. Thanks for doing this
Yeah.
podcast, talking about some bear stuff in the past, and we have way more stories to go through. Maybe we need to make more stories too, but I think there's a couple we could talk about in the future that'd be kind of fun. But thanks, man.
Oh yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I think there's some of those lower rogue encounters that are kind of cool, or even like some of the stuff on an old backpacking trip that we were on. I think we had like a couple bear sightings at that one too. So we'll get
Well,
into all
yeah,
that.
we've had our share of backpacking adventures, not just in the Lower Rogue, but other places too. And I'd like to talk with you more about that future as well.
Oh yeah, I want to do that too. I think that'd be really cool. But thanks, Robert. I really
Yeah,
appreciate you doing this podcast with me. We're coming together. We're finally putting together. I guess what might be like a pretty consistent outdoors podcast. It's pretty sweet, man. I really appreciate it.
yeah, I'm hoping it works out.
It's cool, man. No, it's just the beginning, but we got to keep doing them, and I appreciate you doing it with me every week here. We got to get the site going, the stream up. It's really cool, and anybody that's bothered to listen to these episodes, it's great. I really appreciate anyone taking the time to do it.
Yeah, and you know, as I think as time develops and we continue doing this more and more frequently, you know, we're gonna have more pressing topics and things that you know are very entertaining.
We're gonna be the most entertaining, really, Robert. And I mean, you probably learned this a little bit about going through the podcast thing. There's not that much entertainment in some podcasts out there. I mean, like to kind of break through, it seems like at least with talent wise or to be entertaining, we would be, I think, in the running for it. So I think it's cool that we're doing a podcast about this stuff together. So Robert, I wanted to say thank you very much for doing this podcast with me. And on behalf of Robert Biscarret, my name is Billy Newman, and I want to say thank you guys very much for listening to this episode of the Get Out There podcast. Thank you.